I stepped out of the taxi and immediately felt my stomach twist into knots. My father's house looked beautiful as always, the massive stone facade glowing in the early evening light. Cars lined the circular driveway, expensive ones, that belonged to Dad's business associates and friends. About 20 people mingled on the elegant back patio, holding wine glasses and laughing. Dad's annual summer party. I used to look forward to these. Keith paid the taxi driver while I smoothed down my dress, trying to calm my racing heart. I'd begged him this morning to get the Tesla back. Just for today. Just so Dad wouldn't ask questions. He'd refused. Said his mother needed it. End of discussion. Now we were here, and I had no idea what I was going to say. Dad spotted me immediately. He was standing near the outdoor bar talking to George, his best friend, but his eyes found me the second I walked around the side of the house. His face lit up with that smile he saved just for me. Then his eyes shifted to the taxi pulling away from the curb. The smile faded. Confusion crossed his features, then concern. He excused himself from George and walked toward me with quick, purposeful steps. My heart hammered harder. "Sweetheart," he said, pulling me into a hug. Then he pulled back, his hands on my shoulders, studying my face. "Why did you come in a taxi?" I opened my mouth. No words came out. Dad's eyes narrowed slightly. "Where's the Tesla I bought you?" The patio had gone quiet. I could feel people turning to watch us. George had moved closer, his expression worried. I tried again to speak, to find some explanation that wouldn't make this worse. But Keith jumped in before I could form a single word. "I gave it to my mum," he said casually, like he was discussing the weather. His hand found my lower back in a gesture that probably looked supportive, but felt controlling. She needed it more than Natalie did. Her old car was breaking down constantly, and you know how it is, family takes care of family. The entire patio went silent. I mean completely, utterly silent. Someone had been laughing a moment ago, but the sound cut off like someone had pressed a mute button. Every single person turned to look at us. I couldn't breathe. I stared at my father's face, watching it change. First, shock. His eyebrows went up, his mouth opened slightly. Then something else, something that made my blood run cold. His expression went completely blank, smooth, emotionless. I knew that look. I'd seen it exactly 3 times in my life. Once when a business partner tried to cheat him, once when a man was rude to my mother at a restaurant, once when I was 16 and a boy broke my heart. It was the calm before the storm. Dad stood perfectly still. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just stared at Keith with those blank, terrifying eyes. 5 seconds passed. 10, 15. George's eyes were huge. A woman near the pool had her hand over her mouth. Keith's confident smile started to falter. "Mr. Pierce, it's really not a big deal. Mum was desperate for reliable transportation. And..." Dad moved. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. My heart stopped. He unlocked it, scrolled, found a number, hit call, put the phone to his ear. Never once looked away from Keith's face. "Yes," Dad said when someone answered, his voice perfectly calm and clear. So clear that everyone on that silent patio could hear every word. "This is Robert Pierce. I need to report a stolen vehicle." Keith's face drained of all color. "Wait, what? Mr. Pierce, it's not stolen." But Dad was already speaking again, giving details. Make, model, color, license plate number. The license plate number of my Tesla. I felt dizzy. Unreal. Like I was watching this happen to someone else. Keith started talking faster, his voice pitching higher. "Sir, please, it's a misunderstanding. I'm her husband. It's community property." Dad held up one finger. "Wait." Keith's mouth snapped shut. Dad finished his call, ended it, slipped his phone back into his pocket. Then he looked at Keith with eyes like ice. "That car was a gift to my daughter, registered in her name, titled to her. You took it without her permission and gave it to someone else." His voice was still calm. Deadly calm. "That's theft. 6 months earlier, I sat across from my father at his favorite restaurant, a small Italian place he'd been going to for 30 years. It was my 31st birthday, and he'd insisted on just the three of us, me, him, and Keith. Dinner had been perfect. Dad told stories about my mother, about how she'd loved birthdays and always made them special. I cried a little, missing her. Keith held my hand and said all the right things. After dessert, Dad pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "I have something for you, sweetheart." Inside were car keys. Tesla keys. I stared at them, confused. "Dad, what?" "Come outside." We walked out to the parking lot, and there it was. A gorgeous red Tesla with a giant white bow on the hood. I actually gasped, put my hands over my mouth. "Dad, no. This is too much. I can't." "Yes, you can." He put the keys in my hand and closed my fingers around them. "Your mother would have wanted you to have something special. You work so hard at that clinic, driving that old Honda with 200,000 miles on it. The thing barely starts in winter. Let me do this for you." Tears streamed down my face. I hugged him so tight. Thank you so much." Keith came over, smiling. "Mr. Pierce, this is incredibly generous. Thank you for taking such good care of her." Dad shook his hand. "She's my daughter. That's what fathers do." I drove the Tesla home that night, and it felt like floating. Everything was smooth and quiet and perfect. But Keith was quiet too. Different quiet. "That's some gift," he said after 10 minutes of silence. "I know. I still can't believe it. Must be nice. Having a rich daddy who can just buy you a $60,000 car on a whim." I glanced at him. His tone had an edge to it. "It wasn't a whim. It was my birthday." "Right. Of course." He stared out the window. "Some of us have to work for everything we have, but that must be nice too, getting things handed to you." My happiness deflated like a popped balloon. "That's not fair. I'm just saying, it's a different world for you than it is for most people." We didn't talk the rest of the drive home. Over the next few weeks, the comments continued. Little digs about the fancy car and how some people show off their privilege. When I suggested we take the Tesla to visit friends, Keith said it was too showy and people would think we were bragging. I started driving my old Honda again, just to avoid the comments. The first time I drove to Keith's mother's house in the Tesla, Lorraine's face went sour the second she saw it. "Well," she said, standing in her doorway with her arms crossed, "don't you look fancy?" "Keith's dad bought her a Tesla for her birthday," Keith said, his voice flat. "Must be nice," Lorraine said, in the exact same tone Keith had used. "Some people get everything handed to them, while the rest of us struggle with cars that break down every other week." The visit was uncomfortable. Lorraine made pointed comments about wealth and privilege, about how real people had to work for things, about how her car was 15 years old and barely running but she couldn't afford anything better. Keith was silent and moody on the drive home. A month later, he brought up his mother's car troubles at dinner. "Her transmission is going. The repair estimate is $3,000. She doesn't have that kind of money." "That's awful. Maybe we could help, contribute 1,000 or something." "That's what I was thinking." He nodded, seeming relieved. "Family helps family, right?" "Of course." I thought that was the end of it. We sent his mother a check for $1,000, but a week later, Keith brought it up again. "I've been thinking, what if instead of Mum spending money on repairs for that old car, we just let her borrow the Tesla, just temporarily, until she saves up for something decent?" I stopped loading the dishwasher and turned to stare at him. "What?" "Just hear me out. You have 2 cars. The Honda runs fine. Mum has nothing reliable. We could let her use the Tesla for a few months." "No, Natalie. That car was a gift from my father. To me. Specifically to me. And you're just going to hoard it while my mother's car dies and leaves her stranded." "I'm not hoarding it. I drive it. And we already gave her money for repairs." "Which isn't enough." His voice rose. "You have so much, and you can't share one car with someone who has nothing." "Keith, that's not fair." "What's not fair is you having everything while my mother struggles." We fought for an hour. I held firm. The answer was no. Finally, Keith apologized. Said he understood. Said he was just worried about his mum, but he shouldn't have asked. He promised he wouldn't bring it up again. I believed him. I actually believed him. 2 months passed. Keith stopped mentioning the car, and I thought we'd moved past it. But the little comments never really stopped. Anytime I mentioned my father, Keith would make some remark about nice problems to have, or must be tough being so privileged. I started avoiding talking about Dad altogether. Then one Saturday morning, I woke up to find Keith already gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter in his handwriting. Took your car to get it detailed as a surprise. Back this afternoon. Love you. I smiled. It was sweet. The Tesla had been looking a little dirty lately, and I'd been meaning to wash it. I made coffee and settled in to catch up on paperwork for the clinic. Patient files, inventory orders, the boring parts of running a veterinary practice. Afternoon came. No Keith. I called him around 3. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. Hey babe, what's up? Just checking in. How's the detailing going? Oh yeah, it's taking longer than they thought, probably another few hours. Which place did you take it to? That one on Riverside. I'll be home soon. He hung up before I could ask anything else. By 8 o'clock, I was worried. I called again. Natalie, seriously, I told you it's taking a while. Stop checking up on me. I'm not checking up. I'm just wondering when you'll be home. When I'm done. God, you're so paranoid sometimes. He hung up again. He finally walked through the door at 9:30. Without the Tesla. Where's my car? Keith kicked off his shoes, not meeting my eyes. The detailing shop found some paint issues. They need to buff them out. They'll keep it for a few days. What paint issues? The car is practically new. I don't know, babe. I'm not a car expert. They said they'd call when it's ready. Something felt wrong. Off. What's the name of the shop? I want to call them tomorrow. Keith's jaw tightened. Why? You don't trust me to handle it? I just want to know what's wrong with my car. Nothing's wrong, they're fixing it. Why do you have to interrogate everything I do? He walked to the bedroom and closed the door. I stood in the kitchen, my stomach churning with unease. The next morning, Keith was secretive with his phone, angling it away when I walked by, taking calls in the other room. Keith, I really need the name of that shop. I'll handle it, Natalie. Can you just trust me for once? Days crawled by. Then a week. My car was still gone. Keith kept saying soon, and they're still working on it, and getting irritated when I asked questions. Finally, I'd had enough. Keith, where is my car? He was making coffee, and his whole body went rigid. He didn't turn around. I lent it to my mum. The words hung in the air like poison. You what? Her car completely died. She was stranded. She needed help. So you lent her my car, without asking me. He finally turned around, and his face was defensive. Angry, even. What was I supposed to do? Let my mother be stranded? I knew you'd say no, Natalie. You've made it clear you won't help her. That's not true. We gave her money. $1,000. That barely covered half the repairs. She needed actual help, and you were too selfish to provide it, so I made the decision for you. I felt like I'd been slapped. You lied to me. For over a week, you made up a story about detailing and paint issues. Because I knew you'd react like this. You care more about your precious car than about my mother's safety. Get it back. Today. Right now. It's been a week, Natalie. She's using it. She needs it. I don't care. Get my car back. Or what? We stared at each other. I need my car for work, Keith. I have to drive to the farm supply store to make house calls. Use the Honda. It runs fine. That's not the point. But he'd already walked away. Another week passed. Then 2. I kept demanding Keith get the Tesla back. He kept saying soon, and making me feel guilty for being heartless about his mother's situation. I started driving the old Honda again, feeling like a fool. One afternoon, I had to drive across town to pick up medication for the clinic. I passed Lorraine's apartment complex, and there it was. My red Tesla, parked in her designated spot. with a new bumper sticker on the back window. Blessed and grateful. On my car. My father's gift to me. I pulled over and sat there staring at it. My hands gripping the steering wheel so hard they hurt. This wasn't borrowing. This wasn't temporary. Keith had given my car to his mother, and she'd made it hers. I stormed into the house that evening and found Keith watching TV like nothing was wrong. I saw the car. At your mother's apartment, with a bumper sticker on it. He didn't even look away from the screen. Yeah, she mentioned she put a sticker on it. So what? So what? Keith, she's treating my car like it's hers. She's grateful for the help, that's what the sticker means. I want it back, tomorrow. I'm serious. He finally turned to look at me, and his expression was cold. Good luck with that. My blood went cold. What does that mean? The car's in my mum's name now. For a second, I couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. What? Keith stood up, crossed his arms. I helped her register it, for insurance purposes, since she's the one driving it anyway. You can't do that. The title is in my name. Something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, maybe. Actually, you left the title in the glove box. I took care of the paperwork. Mum really needed reliable transportation. The room tilted. You transferred my car into your mother's name, without telling me. Community property. Babe. We're married. What's yours is mine, right? That's not how it works. You can't just… It's done. And honestly, this reaction is exactly why I didn't tell you. You're being incredibly selfish about this. I'm selfish? You stole my car. I helped my mother. She was desperate, and you were too busy protecting your precious gift from Daddy to care. I grabbed my phone. I'm calling the police. Keith laughed. Actually laughed. Go ahead. It's a civil matter now, not theft. You'll have to take my mum to court. Sue a struggling older woman for her only reliable transportation. See how that makes you look. My hand froze. He knew. He knew exactly what he'd done, and how trapped it made me. Fighting to get the car back meant legal action against Lorraine, meant looking cruel and petty, meant destroying what was left of my marriage. You had no right, I whispered. I had every right. I'm your husband, and my mother needed help that you were too selfish to give. He walked out of the room, leaving me standing there shaking. I called my father that night, my hands trembling as I dialed. Sweetheart, it's late. Everything okay? I opened my mouth to tell him everything. The lies, the theft, the title transfer. But the words stuck in my throat. If I told Dad, he'd be furious. He'd take action. It would blow up my marriage completely. And some small, pathetic part of me still hoped I could fix this. I have a question about car titles. Hypothetically, Dad's voice sharpened. Natalie, what's going on? Nothing. I'm just wondering, if someone transfers a car title without the owner's permission, is that legal? Silence on the other end. Then, where's the Tesla? It's fine. I'm just asking. Natalie Marie, where is your car? Dad, please, just answer the question. Another long pause. If someone transfers a title without permission, that's fraud. Potentially theft. Why are you asking me this? Just curious. Legal hypotheticals. I'm fine. The car's fine. You're a terrible liar. Always have been. Tears burned my eyes. I have to go. Love you. I hung up before he could press harder. Over the next months, I saw the Tesla around town occasionally. Lorraine driving it to the grocery store, parked at her church. Each time felt like a punch to the stomach. Keith acted like the matter was closed, got angry whenever I brought it up, accused me of being materialistic and cruel. I drove my old Honda and felt like a fool. Then the invitation came. Dad's annual summer party. Keith and I were barely speaking by then, but we had to go. Family obligation. I looked at the date and felt panic rise in my chest. Keith, we need to get the car back before the party. Dad will notice. Keith was scrolling through his phone. We'll tell him it's in the shop or something. He'll ask questions. So we'll handle it. Stop worrying. Please. Just get it back for one day. We can give it back to your mum after. My mother has plans that weekend. She needs the car. We'll figure out an excuse. Keith, enough, Natalie. God, you're obsessed with this. It's just a car. But it wasn't just a car. It was my father's love. His way of taking care of me. A symbol of everything Keith had slowly been taking away. My voice. My choices. My dignity. The party was in 2 weeks. I had a terrible feeling about this. A certainty that this was going to end badly. But I had no idea just how badly until we stepped out of that taxi. The morning of the party, I woke up with a knot of dread in my stomach. Keith, please. One last time. Can we get the car back just for today? He was getting dressed, didn't even look at me. I already told you. Mum has plans, she needs it. My father is going to ask. Then we'll explain. It's not a big deal, Natalie. Stop being so dramatic. It is a big deal. You don't know my father. I know he spoils you and you let him. We'll take a taxi, say the car's in the shop, and move on. End of discussion. My hands were shaking as I got ready. I put on a nice dress, did my makeup, but I felt sick the entire time. The taxi ride to Dad's house was silent. Keith scrolled through his phone while I stared out the window, trying to prepare explanations that didn't sound like lies. When we pulled up to the circular driveway, I saw all the expensive cars, the beautiful house, the patio already full of people in summer clothes, laughing and drinking wine. I used to love these parties. Keith paid the driver. I stepped out onto the driveway, smoothing my dress, and immediately saw my father's face. He was talking to George near the outdoor bar, but his eyes found me instantly. That special smile appeared, then vanished just as quickly. His gaze shifted to the taxi pulling away. Confusion crossed his face. Then concern. He excused himself and walked toward us, his steps quick and purposeful. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Sweetheart," he said, pulling me into a hug. When he pulled back, his hands stayed on my shoulders. He studied my face like he was searching for injuries. "Why did you come in a taxi?" I opened my mouth. My throat was completely dry. Dad's eyes narrowed. Not angry, worried. "Where's the Tesla I bought you?" The patio behind him had gone quiet. People were turning to watch. George had moved closer, his expression concerned. I tried to speak. To say something. Anything. But Keith's voice came first, casual and confident. "I gave it to my mum." Time seemed to stop. Dad's hands dropped from my shoulders. Keith kept talking, like this was perfectly reasonable. "She needed it more than Natalie did. Her old car was breaking down constantly, and you know how it is, family takes care of family." The silence was deafening. Every single conversation on that patio stopped. 20 people turned to stare at us. A woman near the pool had her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. George's eyes went wide with shock, and my father's face went completely blank. That terrible, empty expression I'd only seen a handful of times in my life. The calm before the storm. He stood perfectly still, didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at Keith with eyes like ice. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. Keith's confident smile started to crack at the edges. "Mr. Pierce, it's really not a big deal. Mum was desperate for reliable transportation, and..." Dad moved. Slow and deliberate, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone. My heart stopped completely. He unlocked it. His fingers moved across the screen with careful precision. Found a number, pressed call, raised the phone to his ear. Never once looked away from Keith's face. When someone answered, Dad's voice was perfectly calm. So calm it was terrifying. "Yes, this is Robert Pierce. I need to report a stolen vehicle." Keith's face drained of all color. "Wait, what? Mr. Pierce, that's not it, it's not stolen, I'm her husband." Dad continued speaking into the phone, like Keith hadn't said a word. "Red Tesla Model 3. License plate." He recited the number from memory. My knees felt weak. The patio had become a gallery of shocked faces, all watching this unfold. Keith was talking faster now, his voice pitching higher with panic. Sir, please, it's a misunderstanding, it's community property, we're married. Dad held up one finger. Wait. Keith's mouth snapped shut. Dad finished giving information to whoever was on the other end. Address. Details. His voice never wavered. Then he ended the call, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and looked at Keith with an expression that made my blood run cold. That car, Dad said, his voice quiet but carrying across the silent patio, was a gift to my daughter, registered in her name, titled to her. He took one step closer to Keith. You took it without her permission and gave it to someone else. Another step. That's theft. Keith stammered. But we're married, it's community. Then you should have asked her permission. Dad's eyes were ice. You didn't. And you sure as hell didn't ask mine. The police arrived exactly 18 minutes later. I know because I watched the entire time tick by on my phone, standing frozen on my father's patio, while 20 guests pretended not to stare. 2 officers walked around the side of the house, their uniforms crisp, expressions professional. Keith's face went from white to grey. Mr. Pierce, the older officer said. Dad stepped forward, calm and composed, like he was discussing a business transaction. Thank you for coming. My daughter's vehicle was taken without her permission and given to a third party. The officer pulled out a notepad. Can you explain the situation? Dad gestured to me. The car in question is a Tesla I purchased as a birthday gift for my daughter, Natalie. Title and registration are in her name. Her husband took the vehicle without her knowledge or consent and transferred it to his mother. The officer turned to Keith. Is this accurate? Keith's hands were shaking. I'm her husband. We share everything. It's community property. I was just helping my mother. Did you have your wife's permission to give the car away? The officer asked. She would have said no. My mother needed it desperately, and Natalie wasn't being reasonable. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, did you give permission for this vehicle to be transferred or given away? Every eye was on me. Keith's pleading look. George's supportive nod. My father's steady, calm presence beside me. I found my voice, though it shook. No, I didn't. Natalie, what are you doing? Keith's voice cracked. Tell them it's fine. It's just a misunderstanding. It's not fine. The words came stronger now. You took my car without asking. You lied to me about where it was. You transferred the title, without my knowledge or permission. My voice broke, but I kept going. None of that was okay. The officer made notes. Where is the vehicle currently located? Keith pressed his lips together, defiant. Silent. Dad pulled out his phone again. I have the address where it's being kept. He read off Lorraine's address. I stared at him. How did you? I looked it up when you called me weeks ago, asking about title transfers. His voice was gentle. I knew something was wrong. I've been waiting for you to tell me the truth. Tears burned my eyes. The officers explained they'd go, recover the vehicle, and Keith might face charges depending on what the district attorney decided. As they turned to leave, Keith exploded. This is insane! His voice was loud, desperate. Natalie, are you really going to side with your rich father over me? Over my mother? She needed that car. Something inside me snapped. You could have asked me, Keith. We could have helped her buy a used car, given her more money, found another solution. But you didn't ask. You stole from me and lied about it for months. Because I knew you'd say no. You and your father with all your money. Looking down on people like us. I never looked down on anyone. I was crying now, but I didn't care. I loved you. I wanted to help your mother. But you didn't give me a choice. You just took what you wanted. Keith turned his fury on my father. This is your fault. You've always treated Natalie like she's too good for me. Always throwing your money around, making me feel small with your expensive gifts. Dad's calm finally cracked. His voice came out hard and sharp. I gave my daughter a gift. You stole it. Those are the facts. Everything else is your insecurity talking. George stepped forward from where he'd been watching. I've been watching you for 3 years, Keith. The little comments about Natalie's privilege. The way you diminish her accomplishments. The entitlement. We all saw it. Several guests murmured agreement. Keith looked around the patio and seemed to realize, finally, that every single person there had witnessed his humiliation. His face flushed red. I don't have to stand here and take this. He pulled out his phone, jabbing at the screen. I'm calling an Uber. You people are unbelievable. You're leaving? I asked quietly. What else am I supposed to do? Stay here while your father treats me like a criminal? He laughed bitterly. Have fun with your rich family, Natalie. Hope the car was worth your marriage. He stormed off toward the front of the house, phone pressed to his ear. I stood there, shaking, tears streaming down my face. The patio was still silent. Then someone cleared their throat awkwardly. Conversation slowly started again, quieter now. Dad put his arm around my shoulders and guided me toward the house. Come inside, we need to talk. George followed us. When we were alone in Dad's study, away from the guests, I collapsed onto the leather couch and sobbed. Really sobbed. Months of frustration and manipulation and gaslighting pouring out. Dad sat beside me, his arm around me, not saying anything, just being there. When I finally caught my breath, George handed me tissues. How long has this been going on? Dad asked quietly. Months. Since you gave me the car. Why didn't you tell me? I wiped my eyes. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to admit my marriage was falling apart, and Keith made me feel like I was being selfish, like I was the problem for not wanting to share. Dad's jaw tightened. This was never about sharing, it was about control. He made me feel so guilty. That's what manipulators do. George's voice was gentle but firm. They make you question your own reality, make you feel selfish for having boundaries. Dad turned to face me fully. Your mother used to tell you something. Do you remember? Fresh tears spilled over. Never dim your light for anyone. You've been dimming your light for 3 years, sweetheart. Keith has been slowly making you smaller, making you doubt yourself. And this car thing was just the most obvious example. I thought I could fix it. Fix us. You can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken. Dad squeezed my shoulder. Keith believes he's entitled to your things, your money, your father's generosity. That won't change. My phone buzzed. A text from Keith. Hope you're happy. My mum is devastated. The police just showed up at her apartment. This is on you. I stared at the message, and instead of guilt, I felt something else. Anger. Clean, clear anger. I looked up at my father. What happens now? Now? Dad's expression was grim. Now we make sure you get your car back, and then you decide what you want to do about your marriage. But deep down, I already knew. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed, and I was done trying. The guests left within the hour, making awkward goodbyes and avoiding eye contact. I didn't blame them. They'd come for a summer party and gotten a family drama instead. When the last car pulled away, Dad, George, and I sat on the now empty patio in the fading sunlight. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Keith. Lorraine. Even numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off. Tell me everything, Dad said. From the beginning. So I did. Every detail I'd been hiding for months. The constant comments about my privilege. The guilt trips. The way Keith made me feel selfish for wanting to keep my own belongings. The lies about the detailing shop. The title transfer I never authorized. Dad listened without interrupting, but I could see his jaw getting tighter with every sentence. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I should have said something sooner, he finally said. I saw the signs, the way he talked to you, the subtle put-downs. But I hoped I was wrong. It wasn't your job to fix my marriage. You're my daughter. It's always my job to protect you. George leaned forward. Natalie, did you know Keith's been taking money from your joint account? I blinked. What? I have a friend at your bank. He mentioned seeing some unusual transfers. Large amounts going to an account in Lorraine's name. My stomach dropped. How much? Over the past year? About $15,000. The patio tilted. 15,000? I didn't want to say anything without proof, But given what happened today, George pulled out his phone and showed me screenshots, bank transfers, dates, amounts, hundreds here, 1,000 there, all going to Lorraine. He told me that money was for our savings, I whispered. For a down payment on a bigger house someday. Dad's expression was dark. What else has he been lying about? Over the next hour, George helped me access our joint accounts on his laptop. What I found made me physically ill. Credit cards I didn't know existed, opened in my name, maxed out, more transfers to Lorraine. For her rent, her bills, her shopping. A loan Keith had taken out using our joint assets as collateral. He's been funding his mother's entire lifestyle, George said quietly. With your money. I couldn't breathe. For how long? Based on these records, since about 6 months after you got married. 3 years. 3 years of theft I'd never noticed, because I trusted him. My phone, still turned off, sat on the table like a bomb. I need to call a lawyer, I said. Dad nodded. I know someone. The best divorce attorney in the state. Divorce. The word felt strange in my mouth. Final. Unless you want to stay married to a man who's been stealing from you. I thought about Keith's face when Dad called the police. The panic, the excuses. Not once had he apologized. Not once had he admitted he was wrong. No, I said firmly. I want a divorce. Dad made the call right there. Spoke to someone named Catherine. Explained the situation in brief, professional terms. When he hung up, he said, "She'll meet with you Monday morning. She says based on what I told her, you have grounds for fraud charges on top of divorce. Will I get the Tesla back? The police will handle that. Catherine will handle everything else." My turned-off phone felt like it was burning a hole in the table. I should look at the messages, I said. Not tonight, George said gently. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you fight. Dad insisted I stay in my old room that night. I didn't argue. The thought of going back to the house I shared with Keith made me feel sick. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, and felt completely numb. My marriage was over. My husband had been stealing from me for years. His mother was driving around in a car, bought with my father's love. But underneath the numbness was something else, something that felt almost like relief. The next morning, I finally turned on my phone. 43 messages. 12 voicemails. Most from Keith, ranging from apologetic, to angry, to desperate. Baby, please call me, we can fix this. You're overreacting, it's just a car. My mum is crying, the police took the Tesla. Are you happy now? Your father has always hated me. He turned you against me. Fine, don't answer, but you're making the biggest mistake of your life. 3 messages from Lorraine, all calling me selfish and cruel. And 1 message from a number I didn't recognize. Miss Pierce, this is Officer Martinez. We've recovered your vehicle. It's at the impound lot. You can pick it up any time with your ID and title paperwork. I stared at that message for a long time. My car. Back. It felt like more than just getting property returned. It felt like getting a piece of myself back. Dad knocked on my door. Coffee's ready. And Catherine can meet with you this morning instead of Monday if you want. I got up, got dressed, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, sad, but not broken, not anymore. Let's do it, I said. I want to meet with her today. Dad smiled. Not a happy smile. A proud one. That's my girl. Catherine's office was downtown, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. She was in her 50s. Sharp-eyed, with perfectly styled grey hair and a handshake that meant business. Tell me everything, she said, opening a leather portfolio. I did. The whole story again, but this time with the bank records George had found, the credit cards, the transfers, the forged title. Catherine took notes, her expression getting grimmer. This isn't just a divorce case, she said when I finished. This is financial fraud, identity theft. Possibly forgery depending on what signatures he faked. Can he claim any of my assets? The clinic, my savings, anything? She flipped through papers I'd brought. You owned the veterinary practice before marriage. You kept your business finances separate. And this prenuptial agreement your father had you sign? She smiled slightly. This is very well written. Keith gets almost nothing. Relief flooded through me. Really? Your father protected you. Keith can try to fight it, but he won't win, especially now that we have evidence of his theft. Over the next 4 months, my life became a blur of legal proceedings and discoveries. Each week brought new revelations about Keith's lies. He'd been planning to pressure me into adding Lorraine to my clinic's health insurance plan. He'd told his mother I'd agree to buy her a condo. Eventually, he'd promised her access to my father's connections to get her a high-paying job she wasn't qualified for. Every discovery made me feel more foolish and more relieved at the same time. Foolish for not seeing it sooner. Relieved that it was ending. Keith tried everything to stop the divorce. Apologized. Promised to change. Begged. When that didn't work, he got angry. Threatened. Said I'd regret this. When that didn't work, he tried guilt. Sent messages about how I was destroying his mother's life, ruining his future, abandoning him when he needed me most. I blocked his number. His lawyer tried to claim Keith deserved half my assets, including the clinic. Catherine demolished every argument with the prenup and evidence of fraud. Keith settled for his personal belongings and $5,000. He'd stolen 15 times that amount from me over 3 years. The divorce was finalized on a cold Tuesday in November. I sat in the courtroom with Catherine on one side and my father on the other. Keith sat across the aisle with his lawyer, looking smaller somehow, defeated. When the judge declared us divorced, I felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just freedom. Outside the courthouse, Dad hugged me. "How do you feel?" "Lighter," I said. And I meant it. 6 months after the party that changed everything, I sat on Dad's patio again. Same spot where Keith had casually announced he'd given away my car. But everything was different now. The Tesla was parked in my driveway, fully recovered and retitled with extra security measures. Lorraine had screamed at the police when they took it, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd closed the joint bank accounts and opened new ones. Changed all my passwords. Secured my credit. The veterinary clinic was thriving. I'd hired another vet to help with the workload and was actually sleeping again. And I'd gone on 3 dates with a kind, funny teacher named Adrian, who asked about my work with genuine interest and never once mentioned my father's money. "You look happy," Dad said, handing me a glass of wine. "I am, really happy." I paused. "Thank you for calling the police that day. I know it was dramatic. It needed to be dramatic. You needed to see clearly what he was." Dad sat beside me. "I wasn't just recovering a car, sweetheart. I was showing you that you deserve to be protected, that your boundaries matter." I let him make me feel guilty for 3 years. And now you won't let anyone do that again. He was right. Keith had taught me exactly what I wouldn't tolerate anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Adrian asking if I was free for dinner tomorrow. I smiled and replied yes. "New boyfriend?" Dad asked. "Maybe. Too early to tell, but he's nice, normal. He drives a 10-year-old Camry and doesn't care that I drive a Tesla. Your mother would like him." The mention of Mum made my eyes sting, but in a good way. She would. She'd say I finally found my light again. "You never lost it. It was just dimmed for a while." We sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. I thought about Keith sometimes. Wondered if he ever understood what he'd done wrong. Probably not. People like Keith never do. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had my car back, my freedom back, my self-respect back, and most importantly, I had myself back. The Tesla sat in my driveway, gleaming red under the streetlights. More than just a car. More than just a gift. It was the symbol of my father's love and the catalyst that freed me from a toxic marriage. Some gifts save you twice. Once when you receive them, and once when someone tries to take them away. I drove home that night with the windows down and music playing, feeling completely and utterly whole. My light was shining bright again, and I'd never let anyone dim it. Not ever